Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om Allah.
Welcome to Harmony in Diversity. Norm Curry is my name, and today I'm speaking with three executive members of the JCMA, which is the Jewish Christian Muslim Association of Australia. And I'd like to welcome Rabbi Shamir Kaplan, David Schutz, and Samar Magarbel. We'd like to get a bit of a feeling of what is your association with the JCMA? Perhaps you might start that, Shamir.
Well, I started my association with JCMA with its primary and core activity, original activity, which is the annual winter conference. And originally I was asked to help provide part of the Jewish content towards the theme. It's a residential theme-based conference. And then to help coordinate the Jewish component, and eventually to be in the general planning of that. And the various experiences I had through there in terms of the dialogues, the kind of respect, the frankness, the relationships, and I realized this was a healthy environment and an important one. I personally feel that any person of faith, but particularly any faith leader, has should create an opportunity, because they ultimately have a responsibility for being involved in interfaith engagement, particularly positive ones such as this. And so I was even joined the board and have been involved in that capacity as well.
And you're vice president at the moment?
I am. I'm immediate past president, and I'll be vice president this year.
Thank you, Shamir. David,
Yes, I've been involved with JCMA since its beginning in 2003. The credit has to go to Rabbi Jonathan Kerem Black, who had experience of something similar in Europe and thought that it might be able to work here in Melbourne as well. And so we began with the residential conference in 2004. I think we all expected when we first went there that it'd be like any other conference we'd gone to, but what we weren't expecting is that as communities that normally live parallel lives in our community, this brought us in, talking to each other, eating together, because it's residential, you don't go home at night, and any conversation you start in the evening you continue in the morning. It gives time for relationships to work out and develop from there. Over time we became to realize that we wanted more than just a once a year 4-day conference. And so we've organised other events, such as a women's conference, a schools program, various other opportunities for us to come together and associate as well. So that's built up over the years quite a good network within the state.
So it's a very active association.
It is, and one that involves us beyond just the events that we hold.
Thank you. Samar, your association.
Yes, I heard about JCMA a few years ago through my work during Victorian Multicultural Commission, as I was part of the board as commissioner. So I was reading about JCMA work through the assessment of their applications, and got an interest on that. So I continue learning about them, and one day Dai Hirsch, the board member, asked me if I would like to join the board. That I found it is a very good opportunity to actually join and learn about the Jewish community, which I never had the chance before. Born in Lebanon, and we had many friends from the Christian side, and I know lots about Christianity, but never had the chance to learn about Jewish. So I found it really good opportunity. It was a very respectful environment, and they might learn also about the women in Islam as well. That was important for me.
So the JCMA was a perfect vehicle for you to do that.
Definitely was the right place to actually be engaged with and learn about those different faiths. Okay.
And one of the core issues with the JCMA is that the three religions of the book. What's the significance of that, of being religions of the book?
The Jewish, Christian and Muslim religions are sometimes called that. The book, it's not a single book. We share a common tradition, even though, for instance, Christians have additional books to the Jewish Bible, and the Quran is a separate tradition again, but connected. But because of the same historical tradition, it means that there are things that we can talk about that involve us as three communities that don't necessarily involve other religious groups. There's also a point of view that we have, a way of looking at the world that is similar. And it always fascinates me that whatever issue comes up, there will be close commonalities between at least two of the three of our groups. I think it is important. There is a separate group called the Council of Christians and Jews, which is about that special relationship. There are broader groups that involve multi-faith organizations, but there is something we have to talk about within each other. It's sort of family business.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to sit at the dinner table and sort out that family business with one another.
Yeah. I mean, family, I think, is a very healthy analogy, a very positive way and a very accurate way of describing it. I think there's a shared sense of common heritage, common history, common sources, common faith and theology.
Yes.
And but similar but not the same, and so that makes things more natural in a certain way.
Yes.
And also, I think, quite important to, particularly because of a common history, which hasn't always been a positive one. I think that there's a certain need to address that. Having said that, I don't think JCMA is simply about dealing with and trying to improve on the negatives. It's not at all the flavor of our experiences and interactions. But just by virtue of us being together, sharing together, learning from each other, teaching one another, relating to each other, I think we're really making a positive future. Based on something substantive, something that's a real value to each of us. That strikes home for all of us.
Yes, yes. So you've got the same players. You have the same players on the stage, haven't you? When you mention the biblical characters, the characters of the Quran.
Yeah, of course. We believe in Islam. We believe that the Quran came as a third book, as a continuation of the first and second book. Yeah. And for true Muslims, they have to believe in all the prophets who came before Muhammad, including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, all of those prophets. And it's very important to our Islam. So we have. It's a continuation. We can't really say we are not part of that.
We'll pick up on that that continuation. We'll go for a break, and we'll pick up this interesting conversation immediately. Welcome back to Harmony and Diversity. Norm Curry is my name, and we're speaking to three executive members of the JCMA. In our last segment, Samar was speaking about the commonality of the three books. Perhaps I could ask you the question: what does your faith mean to you?
My faith, Islam, is very important for me in many ways. Most important thing is my way of life, how I conduct my daily life, my prayers 5 times a day. Also, how I actually deal with other people. That's very important as well. As a Muslim, there is certain things sometimes you can't do. And being in open society here like that, we have to compromise sometimes how we see each other. So I always try to follow my Islam and my religion, and at the same time be within the wider community and the wider groups.
Yes.
And Islam, it's the most important thing in my life. So I don't know.
So it lays down that it's like your rule book from
It is
waking
everything.
to
It is
sleeping.
everything
Yes.
for me.
Yes.
Dealing with the smallest thing in my life to the biggest things. Looking after my family, raising my children, how to be at work with other people as well. Honesty, very important. It's part of our practice. Helping other people as well. Helping not just Muslims. Everyone in need, of course. Anyone in needs me to help. It's something I love to do. So, and that's what Islam is as well. Helping each other to survive in this society.
Thank you, Sima.
You often get the impression, or a lot of people get the impression, that when we come together as different religious groups, we're involved in some sort of syncretism, trying to blend our faiths,
Yes.
or some sort of relativism, where we're denying elements of our faith, and nothing could be further from it. It's the fact that, like for instance, myself as a Christian, my faith in Jesus Christ, in His Lordship in my life, the fact that that's a core part of who I am and goes to the depth of who I am. I bring that to my relationship with Samar and with Shamir and with my other Jewish and Muslim friends, and even with the other Christians who come along. It's very interesting that sometimes it's that relationship that can be the most difficult, the inner religious ones. Nevertheless, it is that it's precisely that we are people of faith that makes us, I think, to one another so attractive. We see the faith of the other, and we see that meets something in our own hearts.
Brilliant. And Shamir?
Yes, I would concur in general with both of these guys. I would say faith for me is about, or religiosity, it's about several things. One is it's about trying to bring out the best of myself. For me, Judaism is about expecting the most of myself in every capacity, both of, as you said, in terms of interactions with others, in terms of my spiritual reality, in terms of my way of dealing with myself and my own personal expectations. I would also say that it allows, it's a language. I think of faith as a language for dealing with the richness, the complexity, the challenges of life, the opportunities. It's a language for translating our philosophies and our ideologies into our discourse and into our lifestyle. And in that way, I think it's a means and a vehicle for plugging into the past, helping me find a way of being connected to my heritage, my history, the world around me, and also it gives me a vision for where I want to go and what I want the future to look like. I mean, it's a means to much broader ends.
That's a very interesting perspective. You've got a situation where you've got these three religions, and you're addressing some of the common terms, but there are, of course, quite a lot of issues which do lead to some sort of discussion. What would be the formula? What would be the sort of principles that set around being successful in a pursuit like you're undertaking amongst those three religions? Would you, Shamir, perhaps you would?
Yeah, I based on my experiences with JCMA, for what it's worth, I think the success of that sort of comfort and that ability to speak frankly about matters that we might not see eye to eye on, but do it in a respectful environment and expect that it will be heard with sensitivity and even if not with agreement. And I think that is a difficult thing to achieve, and I reflect on why I feel that it exists here. I think it's, from my experience, been based on having shared interactions that are meaningful. I think part of the similarities of our faiths, the common origins and what have you, allows for us to really, in a deep way, explore themes, ideas, values, whether it's in our recent conferences about the environment or whether it's about how we relate to a secular society and matters such as that, that we're really able to explore in a meaningful way and learn from one another. And there's so much that we do share. And that creates that kind of trust.
Yes.
It's really fundamental, that sense of trust, that we can go there. And slowly, with that increase in trust, the more we are able to just organically address what sometimes is the elephant in the room, whether it's politics or whatever it may be, and sort of take tentative steps towards discussing those issues and seeing that can also be a place for respectful dialogue. And to the extent that trust exists and that comfort exists, we continue.
That really starts to lay the seeds for this. We will need to go to a break. We'll now take a break and we'll return shortly. Welcome back to Harmony and Diversity. Norm Curry's my name, and today I'm speaking with 3 executive members of the JCMA. We've just been addressing the issue of how can 3 different religions flourish in an interface like the JCMA, and in your description of it, Shamir, it was clear that relationship is really the base of that. How does that relationship manifest itself? Is it ideological? Is it?
For me, the relationship manifests itself extremely practically. I mentioned before that our groups, our communities can exist in isolation from one another in our society. That is not so much the case now. Because of the relationships that JCMA has built up, there are a wide number of people in the Muslim community, in the Jewish community, and even a lot of people in the Christian community whom I now, if I have any issue I need to talk about, I can just pick up the phone and talk to them as I can talk to any other of my colleagues. Because we know each other, we've worked together, that groundwork has been laid. We don't have to wait until there is some issue that arises. We're having daily relationship with each other, conversations already. Even sometimes just organising a organisation like JCMA, having to be treasurer or secretary and to talk about the issues of just running the organisation. This means you're working together side by side on a common goal. Makes other things so much easier.
So our relationship is not just a working relationship. We built up a kind of friendship sort of things. So we talk to each other on work, but at the same time we check on our families, our kids, how we're doing for holidays now. As this is the talk, what are we going to do for the holiday? So it's not just a working relationship, and that's why it's the beauty of the JCMA.
Yes.
It's not just purely work. It's also some fun and some professional side as well. We're learning from each other a lot. So everyone bringing something to JCMA. So that's the beauty of it.
So if an event, and this would be a political event, occurs somewhere, you've actually oiled the wheels of communication. So that
I think it's I think JCMA operates on several levels. One is those who are associated with JCMA will have that natural network to be able to discuss those things, and even the notion that my impulse will be not to sort of address something on my own or with my fellow rabbis, but that to recognize, to have maybe a more global perspective on this and wonder, well, what are my cousins thinking in this regard? So that's one level. Also, I think when issues occur where there's a certain maybe a tension or some kind of misunderstanding that arises between the different members of different faiths, that because we have those relationships, we can sort of slot in and help talk through some of those misunderstandings, put people in contact with each other, because so often it's the lack of dialogue that leads to people building things in ways that are not productive, not healthy, and mistaken, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Dialogue.
So hearing
Yes.
about something happening somewhere else
Yes.
is not the same as when you sit together and discuss it actually in a very professional manner. And just not bringing the old things coming from all generations, from one generation to another.
That's right.
So we are forgetting all of those things. We're putting ourselves now here in Melbourne and talking about our existing life.
Yes.
And leading any sort of issue in a very good mind.
Yes.
It's not, it's a very good mind. So we're not there to discuss it, to dispute about it. We are there to actually come out with some sort of good result and
Yes.
outcomes. And that's what we want for the future, of course. So maybe now it's a start, but somewhere later we might have very good results, hopefully.
Now you've successfully led me into my next question about
That's
the
good.
future. What would be your dream of how it would be with all of the religions, and I mean the main ones at this point,
Yes.
interfacing in a harmonious society?
Well, to me, it's part of it is a dream because of what's happening internationally. But at the same time, as Muslim, I think we learn this in our textbook, the Quran, that God created us as different groups and tribes and different languages, so we can overcome our differences. So we learn how to live with each other respectfully, and each one needs the other. So it's fighting is not anywhere in the Quran with anyone else. So that's the main thing. Maybe it's a dream now, but it exists in our book. And God said, you live together and overcome your differences, learn about each other, and live happily. So that's important. And hopefully it won't be a dream, because if we interrupt, translate all the textbooks, I think they mean the same at the end. But in the Quran, it's very, very obvious and very clear that we exist to actually live with each other in a very good way.
And you have parallels.
Yes, in the Jewish and Christian Bibles is the story of the Tower of Babel, a very early story which lays the blame for our divisions largely on differences in language and culture and race. Then in the Christian scriptures there's the story of Pentecost, where God's Spirit uses precisely gifts of different languages to form a new unity. This isn't a blueprint for how things will be. We don't have a roadmap for where we're going. It is very largely still the Spirit of God that's leading us, and where the end of the journey is His business rather than ours. Nevertheless, it does open up the possibility of being a part of something.
Right.
I'd have to add to that I think whatever the ideal that your aspiration that we're working toward, the dream state that we'd like to see, I think we don't have a specific roadmap, but I'd have to say that would need to involve an aspiration that's based on respect, integrity, and trust.
And time, which we've run out of. You've been watching Harmony in Diversity, and we'll be back, and please join us next week.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.